So before we go to this question and actually graphing it and actually solving it, let's just do a quick little review of graphing lines. Okay? Couple of methods for graphing lines. The first one is if you can write your equation in y equals mx plus b form, then you can use your y-intercept as a point and your slope to find other points. So one way, if you already have it in y equals mx plus b form, you know your y-intercept is 1 point. You could start with that point on your graph, and then use your slope to find other points. Sometimes you don't have it in that form. You might want to use another method. In another method, all you need to do is find 2 or more points. Sometimes the intercepts are nice points to find. Find your x-intercept and your y-intercept. Once you have 2 points, you can join them with a line. The problem with only finding 2 points is if you make a mistake with one of them, then your line's going to be off. But if you find 3 points and they all line up in a straight line, then you know chances are you probably haven't made any mistakes and you've got the right one. So you find 2 or more points, and then you just need to draw the straight line. So there's just a little bit of review for graphing lines. The other thing you have to remember, just another little review thing before we actually solve this question. I know we've stated this before. Remember the rule for inequalities. When you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip the sign. That may come up when you're switching things to y equals mx plus b. So now that we have those ideas, a review for how to draw lines and a review of inequalities, because if we do have to multiply or divide by a negative, we're going to have to flip that sign. This example is a good one for that, because if you choose to change this to y equals mx plus b, well, you would move the x over to start with by subtracting x on both sides. And then in order to get y by itself, you would have to divide by negative 3. But if I divide by negative 3, I'm dividing by a negative, my sign is going to flip. This is negative 1. When I divide it by negative 3, it's going to become positive 1/3. When I divide 6 by negative 3, it's going to become negative 2. So I divided everything by negative 3 to change it to y equals mx plus b form. So if I use y equals mx plus b form in this question, I know that my y-intercept is negative 2. My rise over run is 1/3. That means I'll go up 1, a rise of 1, a run of 3. That'll be my next point. Up 1 over 3. Up 1 over 3. My next point will be there. Join those up in a straight line, and it would look like this. Now again, you're used to drawing straight lines, and I said the same thing that I mentioned before. This is going to happen to you. You're going to draw your straight line, then you're going to think about shading and whether it should be a solid line or a dotted line. In this case, should it be a solid line or a dotted line? It should be a dotted line, and I've already drawn it in as a solid line, so I got to like take out an eraser, like make it a dotted line. There we go. That looks nice. And now I have to decide, am I going to shade above or shade below? And once I got the y by itself, y was less than. So for my shading, I'm going to shade below. And so once you've graphed it, then you can find out where you're going to shade above or below. Okay? This one, based on the original question, it might have been easier to find our 2 points. Can you see, if you plug in 0 for x, you would get negative 3y equals 6, y equals negative 2 for your y-intercept, which we already can see here. If you plug in 0 for y, can you see that you would get x equals 6 right away as far as your x-intercept? That's this point, and you could have drawn your line quite quickly. You would have known it's a dotted line, but if you don't change it to y is less than or y is greater than, you can't just directly from here say, I know to shade above or below. Just because I have a greater than sign here doesn't mean I shade above. The only way I can decide if I shade above or below is if I get y by itself. Y less than, shade below. So in that case, you might want to try a test point. And the origin is a nice test point to try. If you would try in your original equation 0 for x and 0 for y, can you see you would get the expression 0 is greater than 6, which is false. And since this red point is false and that's above the line, you would know you'd have to shade below the line for it to work. Okay, the questions you can do for this one are 3, 4, 5, and 7.